If you only knew.
Okay, I'd like to call the meeting to order, please. And we have roll call. I will do roll call today. Shree is not here, so I am here. Ms. Brown is not. Mr. Fong,
Here.
Mr. Feltner is here.
Here.
Ms. Holycross.
Here.
Mr. Keller,
Here.
Mrs. Phillips,
Here.
Mr. Siebert,
Present.
and this is Rudy
Present.
Villalobos.
Present.
Welcome. Okay, so we'd like to approve the February 11th meeting minutes.
I
Do we need
approve.
to have any discussion before we approve? Or any,
I'd like to make a motion to approve
A second.
the
and
minutes.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed? Okay. That aye is great. Okay.
Hesitant,
Okay, so we have a presenter, Mrs. Melissa Kleps from the Troy Foundation. The floor is yours.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming out today.
Do you want me to take, would it be easier to hear if I take this up?
You're 6
That's
feet
up to
away.
you.
That's good.
All right, well, thanks for having me here this evening, and we have a new member since I've been here the last time. Just want to start out by saying that some of the things that you may have questions, because I know you all too well. The plan for our community needs assessment does not get formally approved by our board until Monday. And so, although we've had the report for a while, the carry out plan and how we roll it out into the community and what our discovery time is, that plan has not been completely approved by the board. So what I thought I would address tonight, because I know there's been some conversations about your committee about having your own assessment. And, I want to assure you that when our board, once we get through the rollout phase, this is going to become a public document. It's going to be a document that the community can use to address the various things that we found within the community. It's also going to be a tool that we will use, the foundation will, to potentially have conversations, to maybe raise awareness about things that you can kind of tell by some of the comments maybe that people really weren't aware that they were doing something that was affecting other people. So I think I'll go ahead and start out by talking about what our data sources were, because I think that's where your committee will be able to draw from the fact that we really did address pretty much all walks of life within our community. First and foremost, you can't boo me off the floor for this one, but our researchers, and I guess I should start out by saying, we hired Measurement Resources Company. It's a firm out of Columbus, and we hired them initially to come in and do just a broad-ranged community needs assessment. And when we were doing the report out, during the first week of June, it obviously was right after the death of George Floyd. We got done with our report out in the data, and the data really didn't dig down into how every member of our community experiences our community and what barriers might exist with the needs that were identified. And so we hired Measurement Resources to come back to our community and do a specific piece dealing with diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I think that's where you'll find it for your specific needs most helpful. So they began it early on with the needs assessment to compare us to a like-sized community in the area, which happened to be Piqua as far as population, and also used the American Community Survey information, which can be found on the Census Bureau, and dug down into what our demographics were as they moved through with the assessment. In addition to that, we gathered reports that were already done in our community. Child Care Choices had just done a child care crisis presentation. So they incorporated information from that study. Wright State University students were brought in through Health Partners Free Clinic, and they specifically did a food insecurity study, not only on Troy, but also then branched out later prior to COVID to, I believe it was West Milton and potentially maybe even Covington. And again, that was used within the study to understand what access or not access to food was. The Troy Chamber did a housing study, and they allowed us to use the data from there. And then the Drug Free Coalition, which is comprised, now go over the members of that because the Drug Free Coalition actually was one of our focus groups really early on to understand addiction services, but also access to those services. And they had accumulated a lot of data and a lot of specific reports to our area about not only access, but how we serve residents in our community that are in need of addiction services, how they're identified, and those kinds of things. So, we used local reports that had already been done as well when they came in, and those were handed over to Measurement Resources to incorporate into the research that they were doing here. Individuals and businesses, specifically some of the community partners that were involved in our initial survey were service providers, social services, employers and business owners, landlords, health service providers, educators, mental health providers, and elected officials. We had, thanks to a member of the HRC, Sonia, when we went out to do the specific DEI piece, we knew we needed to do some one-on-one kind of focus groups, but part of that data collection was getting a survey out to the community. We ended up having 149 respondents. Most of that was because of the legwork that Sonia completed, literally the legwork.
Partner families help.
Foot traffic,
Our
yeah.
partner families help too. Thank you.
Yeah, but what Sonia allowed us to add that was kind of an unintentional addition, and I don't even know if I've talked to you about this, but specifically getting down into people of poverty. And so of those 149 respondents, you would have low-income residents, members of minority communities, Black and African American and Hispanic. You can see I've printed mine really big, so I really don't have to use my glasses today. We had a member of the LGBTQ community respond privately with our needs assessment. And the majority of the people have lived in Troy for over 20 years, and the age range was from 18 to over 65. So there was a real broad range of representation, and also male, female as well. And really the goal of both the overall needs assessment as well as the DEI assessment was to understand what the needs are and how people in our community were experiencing access or barriers to the specific needs that were identified, from this assessment. Seven focus groups were conducted. We had the first one was representatives of Miami County's Drug Free Coalition, and in that group were included first responders, mental health, housing, addiction, and other social services in Miami County, including healthcare. We had adults, another group that were adults that had received addiction and recovery services in Troy that was facilitated by the Miami County Recovery Council. They were able to pull some of their clients together and talked about what led them to services, what led them away from services, And then they also had, within that group, discussions with some of their peer advisors. So somebody that was working with somebody that was going through, somebody from the community that acted as a mentor to that person through their recovery. Specific group with Black or African American women, and that group included parents, recent graduates, whether that was high school or college, professionals, and social service providers. Another focus group was done with Black or African American men, including parents, professionals, and social service providers. Another focus group was with Hispanic men and women, including parents, professionals, and social service providers. A general group of Troy residents that represented the community, maybe age, gender. There were married, single, single mothers, retiree, business owners, and white and African American were represented at that general community focus group. And then we had a conversation with parents of elementary school students who were English as second language students. And, you know, very interesting about how Asian families are here, mostly husbands having a work visa and moms not having the ability to work. And so they have a lot of time to volunteer, but yet no connection on how to get them connected to volunteer opportunities. So we learned some interesting things from there. I'll stop for a minute. Does anybody have any questions so far? Let me just keep going. Okay. The report provides responses on how all residents experience our community, and then it's broken down how they experience the community, broken down by race. So it's Hispanic, Black, and white, and so the percentages show how whether they agree that they have access to something the same, maybe buying a home, for example, or access to childcare, or potentially access to preschool or education. So a variety of topics that were covered. And then what we found from there, which was kind of for at least in my opinion, I guess the icing on the cake for me to show that you need to. Are you good? Am I not loud enough?
That's never been a problem.
All right, is that any better? But I think what we found was the fact that in most cases, I would say pretty much all the cases, we were seen as a trusted community partner. We were seen as a valuable resource, that we have a positive impact on Troy residents, and that 83% of the respondents believe that we are doing either very good or excellent in addressing the community needs through our grant making. So there's that wiggle room of, you know, what do we need to do to always be excellent and be 100% spot on? And we have a few ideas about that. You know, so I think for us going forward, we need to understand what looks better, not necessarily just for us as an organization, but taking the time to, now that we have the data and we have the needs identified. One of the interesting parts, I think, to me was that the general overall community needs assessment identified needs that, you know, I probably could have identified them myself. I mean, they're things that you guys all talk about. It's things that we've talked about as a community for a really long time. But I think I go back to, I sit on the ATP, which is the Activate Troy Partnership, and we sit around monthly, talk about this needs assessment that was done, the study that was done on the community. And I think one of the things that the committee does really well is keeping in the forefront that doesn't need to become a bookend. you know, that you have to keep addressing and you have to keep moving forward with it. And I think sometimes there's been really interested groups in trying to move forward to address whatever that need may be. And, you know, if you don't have access to resources, if you don't have access to the people that need to be in the room, and I think we are the organization that can get the right people in a room, then a lot of times that either goes on deaf ears or people just plain get tired. And so I think that is what, you know, our goal is going to be, is to keep this in the room. And just to give you a little bit about how we will, I'm trying to keep it under 10 minutes. Patrick told me I should speak for 10 minutes. But just how, yeah, it's not gonna happen. I know this committee way too well. But I think for us, what we need to do is, I think it's anytime you have a lot of information and anytime that you have the luxury of making decisions based on that information, that you have to go out and you have to listen and you have to ask questions and you have to meet with the people that are already in that space. I don't know how to fix transportation. It's not what I do. But there's a lot of folks that in our community are doing it really well. There seems to be some flexibility. For example, you know, the Lincoln Center just hosted a COVID-19 vaccine clinic, walkability within their own community. And, you know, one of the neat things about that, in working with public health and health partners to design what they hope to be a nice model to then take out to other small areas in not only our community, but out into the county, Bradford and Fletcher. And, you know, because transportation is and can be an issue, but the commissioner said right away, we need to be able to provide free transportation to go have access to the vaccine, that should not be what the barrier is. You know, so I think conversations sometimes aren't had, and we assume that they're not, the answer will be no. And found that not to be the case. And I think in working with some of the nonprofits that were involved in helping the public health to come up with whatever that model looks like to get out into the underserved communities, it was clear that they wanted to do it. They just really didn't know how to. But there's a ton of partners out there. There's churches, there's nonprofit organizations, there's, you know, like the Lincoln Center, for example, that can be that space for them. So I was on a call today with some people from around the state. The governor has started a bi-weekly conversation with funders in the state of Ohio through Philanthropy Ohio. It's a membership group for foundations, and I've been sitting on the committee and just, you know, we're not unique here in what our issues are and what our problems are, whether that's in regards to poverty, access to transportation. We heard that all over the call today about, you know, you can educate people so much about the importance of being vaccinated, but yet at the end of the day, if the only barrier for them is to be able to get there, then it's, you know, that's a barrier that, you know, doesn't help in the entire situation. So I think our role going forward will be to convene folks to talk about what we found. I think it's going to be a lot of conversations with people that are out doing really great things, but maybe they're doing it on their own. You know, I think there was things in the study that said, you know, why do we have an overlap of service? And, you know, and we are in our community here specifically, I can't say that once you get out of Troy, but I think you have nonprofit organizations that they understand where their specialty is and what they're good at. That's not so much the case as you get out, and there might be 5, 6, 7 food pantries, for example. And that overlapping and the use of the same kinds of people with the volunteers and things can be, you know, I think overwhelming at some times. So, going forward, like I said, I think it's a listen mode. I think we will be at the end of that time doing what we would like to say are just the quick fixes, things that are so apparent and so easy to do that you just do that. There was a comment about why is the Festival of Nations the last festival of the summer? Why can't it be part of the Strawberry Festival and celebrate? And those are the kinds of simple things that organically can happen that in our community without really changing a whole lot. So I will stop right there and see what kinds of questions you have.
So I heard that there was a lot of discussion surrounding the vaccine and just trying to get people to get here to get it, right? So was there any more conversation about the same people that possibly didn't have transportation just to get to work? I mean, did that kind of cross the
Yeah.
dialogue?
Yeah, and that is that my conversation about the vaccine was on a call statewide.
Okay.
And I think definitely, we have funded rides to work to the tune of about $30,000 a year for, I want to say it's been at least 4 or 5 years.
Oh, wow.
It's clearly a model that works. And how can they expand? I don't know. Is that what the answer is to transportation? I don't know. But I think that's what our job is going to be, is to be able to facilitate those kinds of questions and those kinds of groups. And oddly enough, they all do talk. Sarah Baker from Public Transit is really in tune with what Rides to Work is doing. They have conversations with RTA. So there is a lot of discussion that happens, but sometimes it gets a little siloed. And again, you don't have the resources and you don't have all the right people in the room. It's not going to happen. But definitely that came out in our survey. And I think it's something that you heard that, what's that?
I said we had talked about that a lot here.
Mm-hmm.
I think we had toyed around with suggesting that maybe Troy should look at a transportation system that was more widely available to people because it would help with unemployment, especially people with poverty. So.
I know there's a couple of communities across the state that have done some unique things with public transportation. I'm not going to even look behind me. Some of them involve raising taxes with a certain percentage. Lorain County is a really good model of how that. Yeah, are you?
Yep.
Berea. I'm from Berea.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I mean, there are some good models out there that have gotten past. What other questions do you have?
So what's the next step for your organization? You're going to digest this. Are you forming a committee, a community committee? What's the next step for implementation? So
that will be answered on Monday. The plan will be presented to the governing board. The time I really thought we'd have it when I agreed to speak on March 18th. I really thought we would be at that place where I'd be able to tell you what the rest of that plan is. But once the plan gets adopted, I can tell you that we are going to spend probably about 2 to 3 months at least going out and gathering talking points that are underneath the data that we found. And once that is rolled out and we begin, it's not going to be the foundation, I can tell you, that's coming in and fixing. I mean, it's going to be a collaborative community effort, and I think that there'll be organizations that pick up that study and they see a result and realize that maybe what they're doing, whatever their niche is, healthcare, for example, maybe there's some barrier that's in there that they could fix relatively easily, or address it through asking for a grant or something like that. I know I I can state out loud that we don't have enough money to fix transportation as the Troy Foundation. And I don't really think it's our job to determine how that gets fixed. Because again, I don't run transportation. I don't provide healthcare. That's not our expertise. But our expertise is to take a look at what the options are, and if there is funding available that can help to get the ball rolling, collaborate, bring in other funding partners. We've got several other foundations in this area that we can partner with. There's corporate philanthropy. And I think sometimes when you are able to tell the correct story, that funding can flow behind it. So I say early June at the latest that we would be ready to hand over the report to anybody who wants to use it. It'll be on our website, and definitely I think there's a lot of work and questions that could happen within some of your working committees for us to be sitting down and listening. Because the other night, I can't remember when that was that a week ago Wednesday, that working group that you all were having. I mean, you were, that stuff that we need to know to help solve some of the things that we're going to have to help solve.
And I think, well, at least from this organization, what we found, and I'm sure you'll, as you expand that, because I don't want to speak to the future, but we were always amazed. We would figure out, or we would discuss a topic, and then you would find out, oh, but there's something that's trying to address that right now. And then I think what you're saying, and I don't want to put the cart before the horse, you then will look at trying to implement the existing resources, either financially or even through community awareness, so that we can build. I mean, like the Rights to Work is one. I mean, I think we stood at the Troy Fire Department one time. Remember that? And nobody even knew that existed. And then somebody called back in and said, "Oh no, we have a Rights to Work program that does this, and you got it." So I really compliment it. Second thing, I know you've been to a number of these meetings. You and Kathy Roeder are both, and I can't speak for everyone on the HRC. I don't want to be the spokesman for that, but I can tell you we greatly appreciate the level of support that you have given us, and the involvement that you on behalf of the foundation and Kathy on the chamber have given us. As we're starting to implement our stuff. Our posters are out, our brochures are out. We're starting to, our processes are before council. We're sort of in the same position now. We've got data gathered, and now it needs to start to be implemented.
I will tell you that I can't tell you how many conversations that I've had since we started this process. That one of the biggest fears I think is that everyone really felt after all of the rallies were taking place across the country that it was going to be like the last time where the conversation would stop, and that no one would be talking about race equity within communities. I will tell you that we're behind the 8 ball. I think as far as the Troy Foundation, not because we don't fund things that are a benefit of all of our residents, but we don't intentionally say. We intentionally say it's about residents, but it's not all residents in our wording. And at the end of the day, does that mean that we change our grant application? Do we change our grant requirements? Do we start collecting the data that we need to better say yes, we do address all needs of all members of our community? And those are the kinds of changes that, those are the kinds of things you just do because it's the right thing to do. And, I think one of the things that we found out when Measurement Resources first came in, they wanted to see our final narratives. It's a report that is turned in by all our grantee partners. And, it became really clear. We knew what they said. But to be able to extract specific data on who we were helping and who we were serving, I mean, we as staff knew right away we needed to start collecting it differently and documenting it differently. Like how many did it, even to the point of in our system, how many people did the organizations say, you know, no matter who they were, how many people were served. And so, you know, there's lots of things that we can do operationally that start telling a better story and, you know, potentially working better with our nonprofits to say, do you really know who you're serving? And if not, let's figure that out.
But we'd be glad to help if
Right.
any way we can.
Yeah,
I think
and
I don't
and
want to
it may
speak
be,
again for everybody.
fine.
Marvin, you're the chairman, but I would imagine that if we can help in any way, we would want to do
Well, I
that.
appreciate that, and I think that at the very least, I do like to pop in to listen on your different committee meetings. A lot of work does get done in there, and it's been very helpful to me as we've been trying to understand the things that we're doing. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yep, absolutely.
Committee reports. Community Relations Advisory Committee.
Send it to you via text.
You did, okay.
Yeah, I'm on 1% as well.
So,
That's the one I did on Zoom, so we got a lot done because I was on Zoom.
No. You gave us 15. We got a lot done.
I like you. I like
Okay.
you.
So, thank you. Hopefully it'll just stay up. So we just really went over the initiatives, made sure that everybody was comfortable and that we were all on the same page. We talked about law enforcement with the community outreaching program, education and awareness. Marvin was speaking to us about partnership with Joel Mastarian in regards to a proposed program for Troy City Schools. This would bring in a cop and a civilian that would walk through the appropriate way in which to be pulled over during a traffic stop from both perspectives. We believe this will bridge the gap in regards to safety in the community. We also talked about curriculum, possibly it being expanded. It was 9th to 12th, but Ms. Phillips requested 7th to 8th grade kids, so possibly just policing community relations across the board.
and he's here now, so if Joe has anything to add about that, that's fine. Or we can table it until our next meeting.
Let me table it for now.
Okay.
I might have some resources, but I just gotta double check that.
Okay,
Perfect. Thank you.
awesome. And then we went on and overview of the Citizen Review Board. That was tabled, but we talked about that Sean comes on a 6-month basis to go over reports. Marvin did mention that the chief goes to city council meetings monthly and gives reports and that we would have access to those. Let's see, city ordinance. Mr. Marvin put together the city ordinance, and I think that is with Grant. Grant Kerber, and you were going to follow up with Patrick Titherington about the status. Salome did mention that there are some things changing at the state level, and that might be why.
It's been delayed.
Okay, it's being delayed. And then we talked about local election process, and we just talked about partnering with them and putting things on our website for the most part, and also helping to build capacity, possibly for more pollers. Todd did mention maybe we could, that if Kane, you were interested in helping with that, because we know that was kind of your passion. You weren't there, but I did add that in the notes, and then Todd said that he would be willing to help with that as well.
I'd just like to add there, I think a lot of those initiatives on there, like especially that one with polling, I think that we can meet with the church leaders to try to get a lot of those communications through to different groups. I think that's probably our best avenue, other than using the social media platform. But I would think that the social media platform is limited based on who follows Troy City. So I think it would be best if we could, first of all, create that group. And I know we have a letter that's going out to them, but after we get that letter created, then we can start to funnel these things down to pastors. I think that would be the best way.
I agree. Todd, you mentioned some public space possibly downtown that maybe we could put flyers of some
I
sort.
think one's up, right?
Yeah, we already have one up. She sent it out on text
Okay.
message.
I mean, I think this was under polling, so I don't know if the conversation, if we could, do some
No, I don't know.
awareness
We
or
can
something.
talk, yeah.
Okay. And then we moved on to community events. Ms. Phillips filled us in on the Festival of Nations. She said that Ruth Jenkins, who is in charge of it, would love for us to support. Ms. Phillips does want to attend a meeting or have her come and explain so we can figure out as HRC how we want to proceed in supporting the Festival of Nations. And then we also asked if it was a possibility that we could have a booth, and Ms. Phillips is going to reach out to her to see if that is something that we
Can
can do.
I interject there?
Okay.
I think, Melissa, you had just discussed something about someone asking if the Festival of Nations could be with the Troy Strawberry Festival. So is that something that both parties have said okay to already, or is it
I
discussion?
think that was a survey.
That was just a comment that was made.
Okay,
Mm-mm.
I mentioned that to Captain Rutherford.
okay.
I don't, excuse me, I don't think that is what they would like. Like I said, I'm going to be going to a meeting with them the 1st of next month. And she would like to come in and speak to the group to let them know exactly why this was set up, the Festival of Nations by her husband. But I don't think that's going to go over really well.
Okay.
And then the play Self-Evident Truths, it's currently been tabled. We did pose possible conversation of working with Miss Moore Wheat about possibly creating something that's more honoring to her family and lineage. But again, that's tabled right now for the moment. And then we mentioned that we already have fulfilled our Proudy Plaza, our recommendations, and that Motown, Sounds of Motown will be playing at Treasure Island.
What's the date for that?
The date, August 7th.
That'll be-
Yeah, so
okay,
we
June.
better be sure to recruit for that and get some flyers
I
or
was
do
gonna
whatever we
make
need to do.
Poster for that.
Yeah, that's
I
awesome.
was gonna do it later on with closer.
Yeah, that makes complete sense to help build capacity for that. And now we're moving on to the cookout event, which thanks to Todd is now Juneteenth, hopefully.
Mhm.
No one's stopping us, okay? Juneteenth it is. And so we are looking at 2022 to do our first Juneteenth. We had that conversation of, we don't want to just throw something together. We want to be super intentional, super honoring. And June is pretty quick. So there was two conversations of, could we do something quickly, or do we be more well-intentioned to do next year? You did mention that is on a Saturday this year, so that's kind of promising. So I guess we have to figure out, we're going to do this year or next year.
Well, I think the state of Ohio is looking at making it a paid holiday at this point.
Sweet.
I heard that on NPR radio.
Okay.
I know in Texas it is a holiday. I don't know if it's paid.
I looked it up, remember, I gave the statistics, like 29 states, I think, recognize it.
think
It
you
was
said
something like, I
29
don't know, I
plus.
can look it up again. But when we had that conversation, I had just done some investigation.
So are we going to do 2022?
I'm okay with 2022.
I am
Okay.
too.
So we'll
Good.
start looking for that then. That's awesome. And then we went to local chief church leadership, and I was to have the email distribution sent in by the 11th. I apologize. I was a little bit late, but that's sent in. Mr. Marvin and
I'm sorry.
No.
He said that we would write a letter and deliver it or send an email.
you and John are going to draft a letter together, and we are doing snail mail. But I do have the emails on there in case you want to do email and snail mail, because different strokes, different folks. So that's, where are you at in the letter?
Well, I just have a question about it. Will we have funding for mail postage? Can we send that through the city on behalf of HRC? Since we don't officially have a budget. We're just gonna send a letter out to
All
the
the
church
churches.
leaders of Troy. Yeah. Awesome, thank you.
Nice. Okay,
We just
so,
need the extra parking ticket.
okay. So then you and John, where are you at, like, status of that?
Oh, I don't have the letter.
Okay. No worries, no worries.
Is there, that, I guess, you had mentioned the drop dead date.
The 11th. I
You
was
had
late
mentioned the
too.
drop dead date.
Yeah, we were gonna have the email. I was gonna do all the churches' email addresses, and then you guys were gonna have the letter.
We should call.
No worries. And then we went down to history preservation and acknowledgements, and I gave an update on the historical preservation committee. I did send out an email. It was Kane, Marvin, and Todd, to Ben Southerly, Chris Channing, and Patrick Kennedy. I'm gonna let Marvin take the lead on the date of that, since he's been corresponding with Patrick. And Ms. Phillips gave us an update on the LCC history wall that will be completed and active in a few months.
Yep.
And then, and then we talked about the HRC presence on the Troy City website and social media. Marvin met with Lauren. We need an overview of who we are and how it exists. Lauren did awesome pictures, at least mine. Did everybody get their picture taken?
Mhm.
Ruby?
I did.
Really? Am I the only one that got it? Did you get yours done?
I have a picture of it.
I did.
I did.
Awesome. So if you have not gotten your picture taken, or if you don't have a picture that they're okay with, get with Lauren, or through Salome to get to Lauren to get your picture taken.
I believe the Salome sent an email out a month ago
Yeah.
with that information, so.
Mhm.
I didn't get my hair.
You're not gonna mention. names.
Oh, that's so funny. Not mentioning names.
Didn't get my hair cut yet.
And then lastly, Todd just wanted to make sure, he was on vacation via Zoom, and he just wanted to make sure that our flyers and stuff were approved, and they're already, like he said, they're already put out.
Well, we're deficit with locations proposed, right? We're still deficit with locations.
We do? Okay.
Yes.
If you have more locations, you have to list it on yet. So posters are at kiosks, floor posters, also a dropped off posters in libraries, historical library, public library. I also gave to Sarah to distribute to the places to downtown businesses. Also, I gave you one for partners.
We have it out.
For senior center. And system
Maybe we could get one in like Walmart and Myers. I think they have area posters, right? I can call. Find out.
The courthouse would be a good place too.
Yeah, but I don't know.
Well,
I think we wanna-
by the polling.
we want to put up Sean McKinney somewhere at the courthouse. You know?
Sean McKinney, you want Todd
Sorry.
Seaver somewhere at the courthouse.
I could, if you'd like, I could put one in Garden Manor. I could put it in the community room window.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be perfectly
So
fine.
I'll make it. Canada will be great.
Yes, I also dropped off.
Thank you.
Let me get it in.
No, our next meeting will be 3/24 at 6.
Could you expand on the polling thing that you guys were talking about?
Yeah, so we were talking about, the reality of what can we do? And so having education and awareness. So talking about felons that can vote, or if you're, and I'm gonna mess it up, I apologize, if you are almost a voting age, I think if you're within that window, you
Yeah, if you're gonna be 18
register.
by the general election.
Yeah, so just providing information access, and hopefully that we can also build capacity for more poll workers of diverse backgrounds too. So just working with Todd of how can we do
I think
that
it
in
was more-
conjunction.
I think it was
Fine.
an educational process. If there was some way that we don't really need it till May, will be the
May,
next
June, Or
primary,
May, November.
May 4th, and then November. So we were just sort of talking. You know, to do
They're
that.
already looking for poll workers.
Oh, wow.
They are,
On the Miami County Board of Elections website, they are already looking for poll workers.
Yeah, so,
Turn that around pretty quickly.
yes, we probably should start. Maybe it's a first job for people.
Well,
It's a
I
paid
think a great
position.
place would be at the schools, young kids, getting them involved and being a part of civic duty.
I don't recall.
Student government.
They
Because-
have to be 18.
You have to be 18.
Yeah,
Well, I mean, seniors,
seniors could do it, yeah.
there's seniors that are 18.
Yeah.
I mean,
Maybe
some
reach out
point-
to student government. Maybe that's something that they would be helpful with. Yeah.
think the heads
And that's
committee
something you
members are
want to do, right? I mean, we just presumed, again, we know that's your pat, okay. I just want to make sure we're not telling you to do something.
Since Mrs. Brown is not here, I'd like to postpone. I thought she was coming, but then she said last minute she's not.
Okay.
So we'll just push that to next meeting, if that's okay. Any questions?
The educational employment, is that what
Yes.
you mean? Yeah, I mean, we've got the report. I don't have any problem adopting the report for the minutes this week, and then if Ms. Brown.
Yeah, I
it's-
don't
It's
either.
attached, so I think we've all read it. I mean, I think there was, I don't know who drafted it, but it's very concise and was easy to read for me not being here, and I could catch up quickly, so. I think we can adopt that, and if she wishes to comment, we'll let her comment next.
We do need to reschedule for that committee though.
Yes, yes.
All right, so let's approve the committee reports then.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed?
So we need it.
So let's schedule our next meeting time, dates.
For the HRC or for the education?
I think we need to schedule the education. meeting
Yes.
next.
Cause that's one we never could get together, right?
Yeah, let me check mine.
That was Community Relations Advisory Committee, but now you can get together for education and employment.
Okay.
Has changed.
We changed it up,
More
right?
of the same, thank you.
So when should we do it, Salome?
Well, usually Wednesdays work for all of you, so I would pick Wednesday.
We're already doing the 24th here, right?
Yes. for
Yeah.
Community Relations Advisory Committee.
The 31st is spring break too. I don't know if anybody's going anywhere. I could do the 25th if you wanted to get it done this month. What's our thoughts? Do we need to get this done?
We could probably do.
Can you
both.
consolidate them?
I was gonna say, yeah.
Yeah,
Maybe
don't you
let's
think at
do
this
it.
time we
I
could?
mean, we've done a lot. I think we can probably start to make it
So down.
less.
Yes.
Together.
Yeah.
So the
So-
24th it is.
I would move we just
Kinda
do a
awesome.
joint motion on the 24th and
Okay.
or
Yeah.
joint
Absolutely.
session, not motion, a joint session on the 24th.
I love it. Still 6 though, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
we should be able to get it done.
that's an hour each. I mean,
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
That works.
That's awesome. That makes
Since
it
we're
so
all
much
almost-
simpler too.
On
What's
both
that?
of them. Since we're all on both of them technically.
most of it, yeah.
That's awesome.
Okay, then we need to set a new HRC meeting? Or do we have that set already?
No, it is not. You have not scheduled April meeting. You did not decide which day would work in April. It was decided that we will have meetings on third Thursday every month, but
Okay.
I think Mr. Major was not available to attend that meeting, and then
The 21st of April.
What?
First
and
Wednesday.
Mr. Taylor cannot attend first Thursday.
I think they're looking at Thursdays.
The 22nd.
So April 22nd is what you're looking at? Except Mr. Major can't be here?
Right. But you guys can proceed without me.
Can you do the 15th? That's really the third. Is the 15th.
Yeah, I can.
The
Sure.
15th good for everybody?
I'm not crying.
Oh, wait.
It's tax day.
Oh.
No, it's not.
No, I got moved to.
They changed it?
Yeah.
Today?
17th.
May 17th.
May 17th.
They're just changing up all kinds of stuff. at the last
Do they extend it to July again?
It's too much. Yeah.
July?
May 15th.
Is the tax deadline?
May 17th.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's federal. We haven't heard from the state.
From state?
Good time.
Well, then I'm all in.
So April 15th.
Yeah, that's fine.
That's a Thursday.
Well, I-
Who's next
I hope
on
we
the
have
list to
good
talk?
energy on that day.
I'm sorry.
So I hope we have good energy on that day. That's typically really draining.
April. Well, it should be a
Tax day, yeah.
celebration if it spread until May.
I'm sorry.
They're changing. I don't understand why they change
I
everything
already did my
like
taxes.
I
now.
don't think anybody.
They even changed the underneath.
Okay, so April 15th.
$35,000
So
after people filed their taxes.
Todd was asking about the speaker for that day.
Mhm.
So chief. You want to have Chief McKinney, and then also toward police station if you're still interested.
Yeah, that would be
Let's
great.
do that April 15th. That's good.
I think we're gonna have to start our meeting at 5 if Sean is speaking though.
He will not be giving the same
No, he's not.
presentation. He'll be giving just an update. So
All right. Good deal.
Chris, I can give a long tour too. I've been known to give pretty long tours.
It's all good information. All right, so we're good on our meeting?
Yeah.
Terminates?
I'd like to welcome Ruby though. Welcome.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, so there's no public comments. Oh, sorry.
I do have a question. Do we know when the city government receives some part of the American Rescue Plan? I've read something about the county is receiving this much, but I don't know if there's like, I haven't dug into it too much, but I know you guys will be receiving it sometime.
Those are estimated amounts that have been released right now, and we do not have a definite date.
Okay. Because I know they have to make rules and restrictions on how things are.
Tell us what you're talking about. What's it
The
mean?
American Rescue Plan that was just
The
passed.
stimulus.
Yes,
Oh,
Money
okay.
can
The
be
money,
spent, And there's
Yeah.
a 2-year timeline.
I would like to, I'm sorry, are you finished, Kane? I'm sorry. I would like to announce that Troy Christian Schools has come up with a diversity scholarship fund for 25 individuals who would like to attend the school grades 7 through 12. So if you know of anyone that would like to attend that school, these scholarships are available. And you would just need to get in touch with Mrs. Peters at Troy Christian High School. She can help you out.
Do you have a flyer for that by any
No,
chance?
there's no flyer, but I'd be happy to speak with anyone about it if you have questions.
Okay.
Great.
It's an excellent school.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. We need Gavin back.
My grandkids went there.
Yeah, that's something they could talk about at the center. There might be some kids coming out. Exposure. That's really cool.
There's no financial criteria, so it's a very good thing. Any other public comments? No? All right, well, thank you all for coming. I move to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Hi.
Hey,
Yes, everyone agree?
Thank you. Thank you. That was so awesome. What?
Less